tentative groundwork for trilateral talks among the heads of South Korea, China and Japan are reportedly being laid out to revive regional cooperation on issues of broader interest. So what issues look to top these talks should they take place? Will such a summit seek to bridge the gap over differences or broaden their divide? And what are the broader implications of a possible visit to Pyongyang by Russia's Vladimir Putin? Welcome to Issues and Insiders. It's that time of the week, yet again, during which we touch upon stories here in this part of the world that are making headlines elsewhere as well. And for more on this, I have Nicolas ROCCA live on the line. Nicolas, it's good to have you on.
Hello, Sunny. Good to be here.
I also have Nicola SMITH with us. Nicola, welcome.
Thanks for having me.
Right, Nicola, let's start with you. Let's begin with news about President Yoon Suk Yeol's planned state visit to the UK in November. What do we know thus far?
Well, the news just broke today. It was released simultaneously by the Presidential Office and also by Buckingham Palace in the UK. So what we know is that, first of all, this is the 140th anniversary of bilateral ties between the UK and Korea, so it's a very significant year. And this is the first state visit that King Charles will have hosted since his coronation in May. And it will be a very prestigious event. A state visit is the highest possible visit that you can have by a foreign leader. So that will mean there will be lots of pomp and ceremony. We don't have the full details yet, but what we can expect are things like an honour guard to greet President Yoon and the First Lady, and also a carriage ceremony, carriage procession to Buckingham Palace for a state dinner, where we would normally see the King toast his guest and give a speech, and then we would expect that President Yoon would also give a toast and a speech. And I'm sure we'll see President Yoon meeting with Prime Minister Rishi Sunak and other members of the cabinet, and also with the Lord Mayor of London and industry leaders for discussions away from the more ceremonial aspects of the trip.
Right, indeed. And Nicolas, staying with summits, there's been quite a bit of coverage about prospects of a trilateral summit involving South Korea, Japan and China here in Seoul. Now, I believe high-level efforts to this end are taking place as we speak. Could you tell us a bit more?
Yes, there's been trilateral talks taking place in Seoul since Mondays between deputy foreign ministers of the three countries. The aim globally seems to be to make the talks, the annual trilateral talks that have been in place with the between the three countries since 2008, to make them happen again. They've been halted since 2019 because of frictions between Seoul and Tokyo, and of course because of the COVID pandemic. We've seen Foreign Minister Park Jin meet with the foreign assistant foreign ministers of China and Japan yesterday. Last weekend, there has been high-level talks also between Xi Jinping and Prime Minister Han Duck-soo during the Hangzhou Asian Game, and in which Xi Jinping said he would seriously consider visiting Korea, which would be quite a significant move. So I think we could see all those diplomatic efforts as a way to try and reduce the tension that has been rising for the last few months, especially between South Korea and China. Since President Yoon notably arrived to power, he had a very U.S. lenient foreign policy, which of course Beijing doesn't appreciate that much. And there's been a few points of a few issues between the countries. Of course, the chip issue. Then the Chinese state media criticism of the renewed ties between Seoul and Tokyo. The comments of President Yoon on the Taiwan Strait, mentioning it as an international security issue, of course, made a lot of noise in Beijing as China sees it as a national issue. And lastly, the comments of the Chinese ambassadors to South Korea that made a pretty ambiguous statement saying that those who would bet on China will regret their decision in a meeting with Lee Jae-myung, of course, which created tensions inside the South Korean government, but seem to be easing up. There's been the reinstatement of the Group 2 of Chinese tourists in South Korea, a program of the South Korean government to welcome the Chinese tourists. Now we're seeing those diplomatic efforts. So Beijing seems to be willing to talk now that Tokyo, Seoul, and Washington are seeing eye to eye.
Right, indeed. And against the background that Nicholas has drawn for us, Nicola, what do you suppose should top these talks, should they take place?
I think there's a different question as to what should top the talks and what actually will top the talks. And I agree with Nicola that I think it's going to be more about resetting relations and putting relations back on track after months of tensions and criticism from Beijing over the deepening ties between Tokyo and Seoul, and also their trilateral relationship and alliance with the US since Camp David summit. No doubt there will be reassurances from President Yoon, Prime Minister Kishida to Xi Jinping that China has no need to worry about their relationship with the United States, that they have an entirely separate relationship with China. They'll be seeking to reassure him that is strong. President Xi has made his own overtures towards Korea, especially, where he has said that he wants to meet halfway with Korea and that he wants to improve supply chain integration and emphasize their inseparable economic partnership. So it's likely that trade and the economy will be very high on the agenda. That's important for all three nations. And also, we would expect that President Yoon will raise China's relationship with North Korea. And as he said in the past, that he would expect China to use its influence over Kim Jong-un to try to get him to curb his nuclear ambitions. So that will likely also be a priority, especially for South Korea. And for Japan, I'm sure that Prime Minister Kishida will want to raise China's objections to the Fukushima wastewater release, which has caused a lot of tension between the two countries and significant economic problems as well, or potential economic problems for Tokyo. So it's good to have this constructive dialogue rather than tensions, and ensure that diplomacy will really be at the top of the agenda.
Right, of course it will, right. Nicholas, do you believe the planned trilateral interaction will serve to perhaps ease geopolitical tensions, or will they simply reaffirm the current divide over security concerns among the three nations?
Well, I think it's kind of hard to talk, but it's hard to make assessment on the future. I think, as Nicolas said, there could be some room for improvement, especially on trade, on economic ties. I mean, on for instance, the semiconductors industry, the position of the South Korean companies are not the easiest, between the advantage of the Inflation Reduction Act in Washington, but also the economic investment it already made in mainland China. There's a difficult situation, but I think there will also be some points of disagreement that I don't see going anywhere. I mean, as long as South Korea, the leaders in South Korea, Japan, and the United States stay the same, I think the trilateral cooperation we've been seeing is going to pursue on the Taiwan Straits. It's hard to see the countries fully agree, but maybe on the southern, we could see the South Korean President Yoon Suk Yeol go back to maybe a softer line than what he previously said, just staying at the level of maintaining the status quo and no change in the status quo in any non-peaceful way. And then on North Korea, I mean, it's hard to imagine South Korea and Japan agree on Beijing, with Beijing on that subject, even though Beijing will always be seen as a country that has some kind of leverage on Pyongyang. And that will try to keep good ties with them. What we can note is that, I mean, China didn't send the most important officials to North Korea recently, especially especially if we compare them to those that were sent by Russia. So we don't really know what are the ambitions of China towards North Korea recently, even though we can suspect that, I mean, the economic ties that have been bounding the two countries are going to pursue. But I mean, the last two delegations were headed by Lee Hong-jong, Liu Guozhong, that are members of the Politburo, but that are not the highest ranked members. Whereas Russia sent, for instance, Defense Minister Sergei Shoigu, Sergei Lavrov, Foreign Minister, is also expected, as well as maybe in the near future Vladimir Putin. And it seems that it's a proof of maybe Russia willing to go a bit more forward in the relationship with North Korea than what China is probably ready to do.
Right. Nicolas, staying with what Nicolas has just touched upon, what would be the broader implications of a second summit between Kim Jong-un and Vladimir Putin?
Well, if President Putin does go to Pyongyang, then this will again reinforce that he's trying to court Kim Jong-un as a strategic partner to counter US interests. And, as well as pursuing a potential arms deal, which Washington has been warning about. We've already seen President Putin roll out the red carpet for Kim Jong-un in Russia. And we've seen the visit of the defense minister, Sergei Shoigu, to Pyongyang. And we're also expecting the Russian foreign minister to be going to Pyongyang. So what we're seeing really is a deepening alliance of convenience between now two pariah states who are increasingly viewing their relationship as an opportunity to upset Washington's policies, not only in Ukraine, but also in the Indo-Pacific. And if President Putin does go, then it will also show that he's really decided to double down on reversing what was once a constructive role that Russia was playing in trying to rein in Kim Jong-un's nuclear weapons program. He's showing that he's playing now more of an enabling role, and it could also, work to his advantage to a certain extent in the way that he appears to be pursuing Pyongyang to help restore his own depleted stocks of anti-tank missiles, artillery shells, which he needs for the war in Ukraine, even though both countries have denied that this arms deal is on the table. And ultimately, it shows that that President Putin is really running out of foreign friends as well, if he's placing so much importance on this relationship with Kim Jong-un.
Right. And amid concerns of potential cooperation between Moscow and Pyongyang, Nicolas, Seoul, for its part, has called on Moscow to be more transparent in its dealings with Pyongyang. That being said, what are the chances of Pyongyang and Moscow confirming their cooperation on the weapons front, do you think?
Well, I mean, I think it's unlikely, or at least I could say is that I don't see the interest for Moscow. It would be a huge shift for Russia, which would mean ultimately that the United Nations security sanctions are just nothing anymore, and they openly don't respect it. We know we know we've been assuming, and there's been signs, multiple signs that the sanctions are not respected. But the saying it out loud in a way, making it officials, I don't really see the benefits for Moscow. On North Korean side, of course, it would show a strong alliance. It would reinforce Pyongyang diplomatically. But on the Russian side, I don't see what could be the interest of doing it so openly. I think the other question is what kind of weapon cooperation could they confirm? Russia is, as Nicola mentioned, definitely interested in North Korean weapon, probably also in North Korean workers. But it kind of depends if North Korea is able to provide some munitions, some shells in a really large scales. There has been assumptions by the Ukrainian forces that they intercepted some shells, some munitions coming from North Korea, but in small quantity. If it stays on this, relatively small level, I don't see the need for Moscow to publicize it. It's the same the other way around with the potential technology transfers from Russia to North Korea. I think there's low benefits for Moscow to do so, or to even openly do so, except if it wants to definitely break ties also with Seoul. One of the possibility, one of the theory around this summit is that this trip was a form of warning to South Korea, showing that Russia has the ability to help North Koreans' weapon of mass destruction program, North Korea aviation, North Korea's marine, North Korea's space program, and saying in a way to Seoul that if South Korea decides to go forward and change its policy and send weapons, munitions directly to Ukraine, well, Russia is ready to do the same with North Korea. So maybe that's more the kind of reading into that relationship that I would subscribe to.
Right. So maybe the summit itself was more symbolic in nature then. Right, Nicola, beyond geopolitical concerns, the BBC recently covered Korea's efforts to better protect the rights of teachers within schools, I believe. Could you tell us a bit more about this particular coverage?
Sure. So South Korea has just passed the Teachers' Rights Restoration Bill, which aims to give teachers more rights in the classroom. And just to recap, the protests began after the very tragic suicide of a young teacher who reportedly was under a lot of pressure at work. And teachers came out in solidarity over that. And also just to highlight the pressures that they faced. They said they wanted more protection against pushy parents and also just better rights to help discipline in the classroom. They said that they were not being given the powers that they needed just to enforce regular discipline in the classroom. And at the crux of the matter was the Child Welfare Act and a very vague clause in that act that could hold teachers accountable for child abuse over what they said was basic disciplinary measures. And so they were asking for that to be changed. And the government has listened to what they were saying and has made some revisions. So under the new law, teachers will not be immediately removed from the classroom following reports of child abuse. They will also be offered financial support for any legal proceedings, and head teachers are also now obligated to offer more support for their teachers. So this has been welcomed by many teachers and unions. There are some people or some teachers who are saying that it doesn't go far enough, that it should never be the case that if you're enforcing a regular disciplinary action that you could face charges of or accusations of child abuse. And it is, however, a very significant step towards what the teachers have been calling for. And it may take some time for many of the issues to be sorted out. The Telegraph also interviewed several teachers who told us about how much pressure they were under emotionally, that they didn't feel that they had a voice, that they were not being given enough support. And this will hopefully help to improve conditions for them.
Right, hopefully. And Nicholas, what do you suppose can be done to better protect the rights of teachers as well as the students themselves within the learning environment, do you think?
Well, I think the bill the Teachers' Right Restoration Bill that Nicola explained briefly is going in the right direction. At least it is what the teachers have been overwhelmingly asking for. What kind of shocked me when I went to the protest and I discussed with the teachers is that they had so many stories of parents' harassments and parents' abuse, almost all of them. I think even though this law is going in the right direction, probably there must be some thought put into a possible maybe change of the education ecosystem and the way it actually works, because this behavior of the parents shows in a way that the stakes are so high against education, as for the students as well as for the parents, which creates a really high amount of pressure, and that in the end, make the teachers the victim of those huge stakes. I mean, it is not a mystery that hagwon, private education, is very important in Korea, which could partly create a feeling where teachers are in a position where they owe the parents a service, even though we're talking, of course, of a movement by public teachers, but the private educations being so powerful and so present could be changing the mentalities. There's been various studies showing that Korea is amongst one of the most expensive countries to raise kids, vastly because of the investment in education. So this important investment make the education and the relationship between the child and the teacher so important that it kind of is the roots or the cause of the abuse from the parents, and this whole situation. Probably the fact that there's more and more single child families in Korea is also making this phenomenon even worse, because there's only one child in a way that could succeed academically. So probably there should be questions asked and thoughts about reforms of the system, probably where private education could take a little bit less of a place, or maybe a bit less elitist, just to probably relieve some of the burden and the tensions that is hurting the teachers, the kids, and the parents.
Right. Well, the dialogue has begun, and hopefully we'll come to a more productive way to ensure education within schools here in the country. Nicola, on a light note now, we are looking ahead to a 6-day holiday starting this coming Thursday to mark Chuseok, as well as the National Foundation Day. That being said, Nicola, what do you suggest as some potential fun activities for foreigners here in the country to mark this holiday?
Well, I'm possibly not the best person to ask because I've only lived here for a year. But some of the things that I love doing personally are hikes around the city. Inwangsan is a favorite of mine. Also, Namsan, if you want an easier stroll, or Bukhansan National Park is beautiful. It's going to be sunny weather, so I would definitely suggest getting out to enjoy that. Take your sunscreen, but enjoy that beautiful weather and hopefully clear views of Seoul. You could also hire a bike and ride along the Han River. You could go all the way out to the coast if you're feeling really ambitious. And I also love going to Gwangjang Market, where there's just so much bustle and so many things to see, and lots of local foods to try. Another of my favorite activities is just wandering around areas like Seongsu or Hongdae or Itaewon, where I live, and just going into the back streets and just finding new little restaurants and bars, and there's so much to offer in these little back streets. They're quite hidden away. And then if you want to get out of Seoul, then Busan is less than 3 hours away by train, and you could spend some time on the lovely Hyundai beach and explore the city. So those would be my top recommendations.
Right, and I have to admit, I love the hustle and bustle of traditional open markets here in the country as well. Nicholas, what are your suggestions for this Chuseok to a foreign community here?
I think the best would be to be invited by a Korean family to really experience the spirit of the holiday, but it seems like a pretty ambitious goal, and I have not succeeded personally since I've been here. I think, as Nicholas mentioned, it's a great time to go hiking, to go to Bukhansan, do the hikes you don't have the time to do when it's not the holidays. There's also, I mean, I don't want to entice anybody to take the cars, but there will be no toll fees from Thursday to October 1. So if you have a car and you are not scared of very heavy traffic, probably it's a good time to go discover some of the beautiful landscape this country has to offer. It's a good time to eat all the traditional food, the chons, the songpyeon, the toks, the japchae, where I think it's a good time to eat, go out of Seoul if you've got the opportunity, and just maybe enjoy the city, which is unusually calm at this time of year.
Right, capital Seoul will be rather calm then. All right, Nicola, thank you so much for your time and your thoughts today. And Nicola, thank you very much for your insights.
Thank you.
Right, well, that brings us to the end of Tuesday's edition of Issues and Insiders. Thank you for watching. Do join us again, same time tomorrow.